Every so often, football delivers a year or season that bends the rules of probability and defies the odds. Every once in a while, underdogs rise, and the results that normally sound like fairy tales actually come true. And the ultimate example of this was in 2004. On paper, the script always seems to be simple. The biggest stars, the richest clubs, and the strongest nations are all supposed to dominate. But instead, in 2004, the footballing gods delivered one of their most unpredictable chapters. Not just in one league, one tournament, or one continent. In this one year, football worldwide was broken. A club outside the top 5 leagues winning the Champions League. A nation with no history of victory conquering the Euros. A seemingly random club dethroning Bayern Munich in Germany. Neither Real Madrid or Barcelona winning the La Liga title. A small country winning the African Cup of Nations for the first time. A club going the entire season unbeaten in the Premier League, and so much more. 2004 was not just an anomaly. It was complete chaos. However, it proved to us all once again that football is a sport that remains gloriously unpredictable. And no tournament captures the essence of 2004's weirdness more than the 2004 Euros. The hosts, Portugal, were built around a golden generation. Luis Figo, Rui Costa, Deco, and a teenage Cristiano Ronaldo. Around them, the usual heavyweights circled. Defending champions France arrived with Zidane, Henry, Vieira, Makelele, Desailly, and more. Italy as well were full of juggernauts. Del Piero, Totti, Cannavaro, Andrea Pirlo, Alessandro Nesta, and Gianluigi Buffon. Then you even had Spain looking like a dark horse, with Raúl, Xavi, Carles Puyol, Xabi Alonso, Iker Casillas, and a younger Fernando Torres. You could even say the same thing for countries like Germany, the Netherlands, England, and the Czech Republic. Truly, the 2004 Euros was drowning in talent, from the older players all the way down to the fiery, younger generation. But despite the stacked squads and the youngsters stealing the spotlight, like an 18-year-old Wayne Rooney scoring 4 goals and becoming a sensation, the tournament's main attraction became a team that almost no one picked to escape the group table. A team that had never won a single game at the European Championships. A team that had no experience and a team that had no superstars. Greece. However, despite all that, a team of relative nobodies throughout the entire tournament played near flawless football. From the very first match, Greece shattered expectations. They would stun Portugal 2-1 in the opening match of the tournament, catching the hosts completely dumbfounded. Most people shrugged and thought it was just a shock opener. However, later in the group stages, they would tie with Spain, narrowly squeezing through to the knockout stages. However, awaiting them in the quarterfinal brought the ultimate test. Defending champions, France. And surprisingly, throughout the entire match, France was unable to find a rhythm. Until in the 65th minute, Angelos Karisteas stole a header, and France could never find a way to equalize. Suddenly, for the Greeks, the impossible felt slightly more possible. In the semifinal, they would face off against Czech Republic Ballon d'Or winning superstar midfielder, Pavel Nedved. Throughout the entire match, the Czechs battered Greece with wave after wave of attacks. But in the 105th minute, Greece's Trianos Delas scored a header from the corner, sealing the victory with the now extinct silver goal. And if you're confused, that's when if a team leads after the first 15-minute half of extra time, basically they win the match. And just like that, Greece had somehow managed to survive against the most informed team in the tournament. The final would be a rematch against the hosts, and in a match filled with corners and free kicks, it would be Angelos Karisteas in the 57th minute to rise above the Portuguese defense and head the game-winning goal. Greece would somehow hold until the final minute, and when the referee blew the full-time whistle, Greece were the champions of Europe. A team with no stars, no history of winning, and no chance had just successfully conquered Europe. Until this day, it's perhaps the biggest international upset in football history, proving no matter how great the odds, anything can happen in football. Then we have the 2004 Copa America. Brazil would arrive in Peru with a squad that looked like a rehearsal cast. No Ronaldo, Ronaldinho, Rivaldo, Cafu, or Roberto Carlos. I mean, look at this squad. Only Julio Cesar at goal, a 22-year-old Maicon, and a 22-year-old Adriano. However, even without the country's biggest names, Adriano would go on one of the biggest runs in his career. The Inter Milan striker, in the peak of his physical powers, bullied defenses with his strength, skills, and cannon of a left foot. He would go on to score in every round and finish the tournament with 7 goals, winning both the Golden Boot and the Golden Ball. And the final against Argentina was a classic. The Argentinians were carrying a 2-1 lead into injury time. The trophy ribbons were practically sky blue, but all of a sudden, Adriano bullied a ball into loose space, smashing a 93rd minute equalizer just seconds away from defeat. And in the penalty shootout, Brazil triumphed. Not even the firepower of a younger Carlos Tevez or Javier Saviola, who by the way was a former Barca and Real Madrid striker, as well as former Argentinian Player of the Year, could match the monstrosity of Adriano, despite Argentina being the heavy favorites to win the tournament. But as beautiful as it was, it's only a reminder of the agonizingly short prime we were able to witness from Adriano. And the last of the crazy international tournaments that year was the Africa Cup of Nations. In Africa, the established giants of Nigeria, Cameroon, and Egypt were expected to dominate. After all, they were the team with bigger names like JJ Okocha and Samuel Eto'o. However, the tournament hosts Tunisia quietly made history. They would go on to beat Senegal, Nigeria, and Morocco to win their very first international trophy, which till this day is the only time they've ever won the tournament. But if international football that year wasn't enough to surprise you, at the club level, 2004 was really insane. And none was more anomalous or iconic as FC Porto lifting the Champions League trophy, because this was the one that started the legacy of José Mourinho. And that year was filled with titans. You had Real Madrid's Galacticos, AC Milan's dynasty, Arsenal's Invincibles magic, and Sir Alex Ferguson's Man United machine. However, none of them reached the final. And Porto's first real test, where many expected them to get eliminated, was during the round of 16 against Man United. At Old Trafford, with the tie poised on a knife's edge, a free kick would spill into chaos and Castilla would stab home a late equalizer. United supporters were left speechless as Mourinho wildly sprinted down the touchline, signaling that Porto weren't just passengers, they were pirates. In the quarterfinals, Lyon's open structure was exposed by Porto's attack, as Mourinho didn't park the bus, rather he put it on overdrive, comfortably dispatching them 2-4 on aggregate. In the semi-final against Deportivo La Coruña, it was a battle. Throughout both legs, only a single goal was scored. But that was another weird thing about 2004. A club like Deportivo La Coruña made it all the way to the semi-final. And as unlikely as Porto was for even making it all the way to the final, their opponents AS Monaco were also an anomaly in making it there. And the true genius on the pitch behind Porto's success was no other than Deco. And in the Champions League final, no mercy was shown. Porto would obliterate Monaco 3-0. A team that nobody expected to make it past the round of 16 would lift the Champions League trophy. But beyond the medals, something else was born: the modern celebrity manager. Mourinho's blend of tactics, charisma, and antagonism completely reshaped how clubs thought about the man on the touchline. Following the monumental win, Mourinho would ascend to managing and rebuilding Chelsea, while his main man behind the squad, Deco, would be picked up by Barcelona and finish second in Ballon d'Or voting. But over in the Premier League, something happened that was arguably even more rare than Porto winning the Champions League, and that would be Arsenal going undefeated. There are accomplishments that statistics describe but just can't quite convey. 26 wins, 12 draws, and 0 defeats. It sounds much easier than it actually was, because to achieve this, Thierry Henry had to be at his unstoppable best, scoring 39 goals and providing 15 assists throughout all competitions. Patrick Vieira embodied leadership as he controlled the midfield. Pires and Lumber crashed the box and scored all sorts of unsuspecting goals. Sol Campbell held down the defense, and Dennis Bergkamp sprinkled a bit of magic every time he touched the ball. And all of this combined under Arsene Wenger's vision of a fluid attacking game led to one of the most impossible seasons in football history. And it's not like this Arsenal squad just breezed through the entire season. Many times they were at the trenches and had to battle it out. Whether it was from a Chelsea side that were right behind them, or from Sir Alex Ferguson's United that you could never truly count out. This run was only possible due to late equalizers on the road, grindhouse 1-0 wins, and convincing every man on the pitch to continue fighting until the very last whistle throughout the entire season. Until this day, it still remains the only unbeaten season in Premier League history, and for another side to do the same or even better is very highly unlikely. Likewise, over in Spain, nothing was usual in 2004. You might wonder who won the La Liga title that year, Real Madrid or Barcelona? The answer was neither. That year, the league champions were Valencia, because that season wasn't about the Galacticos superstars in Madrid or Ronaldinho's magic at Barcelona. The league belonged to the team with the most synchronized 11. Basically, Valencia won with rhythm, shape, and consistency. Not only that, Valencia would even win the UEFA Cup, defeating Marseille 2-0 in the final. And this unlikely double was spearheaded by manager Rafa Benitez. And surprisingly, this Valencia side didn't have too many high-profile names, most notably Pablo Aimar, Vicente, and Mista. And in that year's Copa del Rey, neither Real Madrid nor Barcelona won, as Real Madrid would lose 2-3 to Real Zaragoza. Certainly a strange season in Spain. Even in Bundesliga, the exact same thing was happening. That year, Bayern Munich's monopoly was broken because Werder Bremen would take the league by storm, finishing 6 points above Bayern Munich to claim the Bundesliga title, while also going on to win the DFB Pokal and secure the domestic double. And this season was largely thanks to the anomalous goal scoring of Ailton, a Brazilian striker that played as a journeyman for most of his career. However, that year and that season, he would have 34 goals and 9 assists in 43 matches, not only being the top goal scorer for his club, but also the top goal scorer in Bundesliga. And for context, he had a pretty decent 5-year career in Germany, but for him, that season was truly an anomaly. And by the way, that was Werder Bremen's very first domestic double in history. But perhaps the wildest thing about that season for Werder Bremen is that they would clinch that unlikely league title in no other than Munich. As weird and matrix-breaking as 2004 was for football, for the sport as a whole, it left a message. If Greece could defy all the odds, if Porto could outmaneuver Europe's biggest giants, if Werder Bremen could dance on Bayern's front lawn, for every player, every club, and every fan, it was just a reminder. In football, anything can happen. And that psychological redistribution is as much a part of 2004's legacy as the medals themselves. Call 2004 weird if you like, but it was a year that multiplied what was possible. Greece's march through Euro 2004 proved that tournaments could be architected by discipline and detail, allowing for outcomes like Italy winning the 2020 Euros despite being so bad before and after to happen. Porto's Champions League conquest announced the era of the manager, showing that the mind on the sidelines was every bit as much important as the guys on the pitch. But most importantly, it reminds us why the uncertainty of football makes it so beautiful. So yes, it was weird, but the weirdness was the point. A year that proved once again that the most powerful things in football isn't just a bunch of superstar names or a giant budget. No one is truly unbeatable. It's the moment when the whistle blows and for 90 minutes, anything is possible. And all it takes is one magical moment.